I am very happy, very proud, and pleased to be able to introduce you all to the Courage and Leadership Award presentation. Courage and leadership are two words that were married in the person of Senator John McCain. And so it is only fitting that at the Sedona Forum we present this award to an individual or individuals who have sacrificed much to show leadership and courage. To present the award today, we have Elisa Massimino. She is the executive director of the Human Rights Institute at Georgetown University's Law School. She's also, we consider a part of our family. She's on the board of the McCain Institute. She's been an advisor to our McCain Global Leaders Program. Of course, for 27 years, many of you have known her as the president and CEO of Human Rights First. So she's really a leader in human rights around the world, of course, starting in America, and that's where she worked most closely with Senator McCain. I will let her describe her experience with Senator McCain because it is truly moving. And with that, I would like to welcome Elisa Massimino to the podium.
Thanks so much, Evelyn. Each year, the McCain Institute presents its award for courage and leadership to honor those who, often at great personal risk, stand up for the universal values of democracy and human rights, and in doing so, inspire all of us with their acts of selfless courage. By recognizing these leaders, the McCain Institute hopes to nurture in each one of us the courage to stand up for what we know is right. But before we present the award, I want to take a moment to say a few words about the man whose life inspired it. I was privileged, as Evelyn said, to have known Senator McCain. Along with a number of people in this room, we worked together to end torture and promote human rights in our own country and in many dark corners of the world. I miss him immensely. Advocating for human rights in Washington is immeasurably harder and more lonely without him. Here at this forum, we amplify his legacy. But the truth is that John McCain confused a lot of people. He was a warrior who worked for peace and reconciliation, a mediocre student with an insatiable appetite for learning, a realist with an optimist's heart, an idealist who knew when it was time to compromise, a free spirit who was relentless in doing the hard work that it takes to get things done, a maverick who challenged orthodoxy but went to the mat to uphold the global order of individual rights and human dignity, a decorated war hero who chafed at pomp and ceremony, an icon of bravery who loved poking fun, including at himself, a victim without bitterness towards his enemy, a patriot who was a true citizen of the world. Senator McCain could not be defined by labels. His North Star was a belief in the inherent dignity and rights of every human being on the planet, and he did everything he could for as long as he could to stand up for that belief, even when, especially when, it was difficult. That's why human rights activists and freedom-loving people everywhere were heartbroken when he passed. John McCain knew he couldn't solve their problems for them. He knew that each had a lonely battle to wage for a better society. But he hated bullies, and he knew how to stand up to them. Every activist in every corner of the world knew they had a friend in John McCain, which brings us to today's award. The past 8 months in Iran have been marked by a wave of anti-regime protests following the death of 22-year-old Mahsa Amini, a Kurdish Iranian woman who died at the hands of the so-called morality police for violating mandatory hijab. Mahsa's death and the subsequent protests reignited a decades-long fight for gender equality and social justice and has supercharged calls for an end to the Islamic Republic. Despite the clerical establishment's efforts to suppress dissent, once again, Iranian women are risking everything for their rights. Under the banner of women, life, freedom, they are leading the charge for change in the face of violent repression. It is critical that the world understands the gravity of this moment and the depths of courage with which Iranian women are meeting it. The McCain Institute stands with them. Their cause is our cause. So it is our privilege to honor the women of Iran with the McCain Institute Courage and Leadership Award. To accept the award on their behalf, we're pleased to have with us today Lily Porzand, daughter of the late Simak Porzand, a famous journalist who lost his life at the hands of the regime, and Marangiz Kar, one of Iran's most prominent and courageous human rights lawyers. Lily is an activist in her own right. An Iranian Canadian and an expert on gender equality, she has devoted her personal and professional energies to advocating for a more accessible and equitable world for women and girls. We're grateful to her for her work, for her example, and for being here today with her husband and their daughter to accept this award on behalf of the brave women of Iran. Please join me in welcoming Lily Porzand.
Hello, everyone. Before I start, I just want to thank you, Lisa, for introducing me and for your generous introduction. It's irony to say that we just realized that we met 20 years ago in Washington, D.C., when my mother was receiving a human rights award from her hands, basically. So it says that human rights activities is a lifetime dedication, but it's rewarding. So thank you so much. First, let me start with appreciating and honoring and acknowledging the McCain Institute for choosing Iranian women to receive the Courage and Leadership Award. Their courage to fight with the gender apartheid regime for the past 44 years, and their leadership in the past 8 months specifically to change and shift the conversation around the gender equality. We know that so many lives are lost, so many of them are still in prison, but they're still continuing the fight. Also, I want to talk about myself and say how humble and privileged I am today to be invited and being here in beautiful Sedona, coming from Toronto, Canada. We don't have the heat and the rocky, mountains. When we were driving, my daughter was asking me, "Are they a real mountain?" And I was like, "I think so. I guess so." So it's really pleasure to be here today. And it's an honor for me to accept the award. And I want just to mention that, if I may, I'm not going to accept it on Iranian women's behalf. I'm going to accept it for them. I was forced to leave my own homeland when I was 24 years old, right after graduating from law school, after I was threatened to be kidnapped, raped, and murdered just because I was a young women's rights activist. I came to Canada, and as a refugee, I came to Canada, and then a few months after I left, they arrested my mother, who was a lawyer and a women's rights activist. She was diagnosed with cancer while she was in prison, and with international pressure, we could get her out. She lives in Washington, D.C. for the past 20 years. But unfortunately, 2 months after her departure, they kidnapped my father, who was a famous journalist, dedicated soul to human rights and freedom of expression. They kidnapped him, tortured him, and finally he lost his life at the hands of the regime. So I promise today that one day, not hopefully too late from today, hopefully soon, I will take this award and will land it somewhere that it belongs to, hopefully, at the Iranian Women's Museum in Tehran. If it doesn't happen during my lifetime for any reason, I'm sure my daughter, Artina, who is here with my husband, will take that responsibility. I want to say that Iranian women lived under the gender apartheid regime for the past 44 years. They never stopped the fight. And the Islamic regime, as soon as they got the power in February 1979, they targeted Iranian women right away directly. I remember on March 8th of 1979, just not even a month after revolution, I was 4 years old, and I was on the street with my mother and grandmother in a peaceful protest to protest against the mandatory hijab. I'm talking about 1979. And I remember in my childhood memory, the truck filled with the stone and rocks, and the Revolutionary Guard standing on top of the trucks with raging anger and throwing us, the peaceful protester, the rocks and the stones, and screaming in Farsi, "Ya Rusari, Ya Tusari," means either you're going to put the hijab on your head by force, or we're going to beat you on your head to die. Fast forward, 44 years later, on September 16, 2022, Mahsa Amini was killed at the hands of morality police in Tehran, where many of us Iranian women been detained in the same detention center, including myself. Mahsa was not the first one, and is not and won't be the last one, but she became the symbol of 44 years of fight with and under the Women's Life Freedom slogan and banner. We emphasize, Iranian women and Iranian activists, we emphasize on gender apartheid regime notion. There's a reason behind it, because we want the international community to stand with us in this fight. When the apartheid notion for the racial discrimination, systematic racial discrimination, became ratified, the convention was ratified, it was not only South Africa who was doing the job. It was the whole world standing up for racial equality. Now is the time for all of us, and Iranian women are taking that lead, but we are asking the international community to stand with us, that hopefully we be able to standardize the notion of gender apartheid, also including in the international human rights standards. When we talk about gender apartheid regime, we live the life. It means that the system, the regime, the ideologic system is legalizing, enforcing, encouraging, and practicing gender-based violence and gender inequality and gender-based violence, basically. How? I'll give you a few examples. In the past 44 years, just a few examples. In the criminal code of the Islamic Republic, the testimony of Iranian women values is half of men. The honor killing and honor-based crime is legalized. The blood value of a woman is half of a man. Adultery, if a woman is proof that she had relationship outside marriage, the charge is stoning to death. These are just a few samples. In the family law, just a few samples. We don't have the right to divorce, child custody, guardianship, travel without male permission, working without the male permission, and so on and so forth. In the past 44 years, Iranian women never gave up the fight. They've been arrested, kidnapped, raped, disappeared, tortured, forced to exile, and so on and so forth. But still, they continue the fight individually or form the civil society campaigns, grassroots campaigns. And a few samples of those campaigns I can name as the 1 million signature, which was a very grassroots campaign, 1 million signature to change the family law, campaign saying no to stoning, campaign saying no to execution, and the campaign to say no to the mandatory hijab. So as you can see, during the past 44 years, the Iranian movement was evolving, never stopped. It's always been there, and it was evolving. In a very historical moment of September 2022, with the murder of Mahsa Amini, the international community also became aware that what is really going on in Iran. The segregation between the Iranian people and the Islamic regime became highlighted after Mahsa's murder. And we paid a high price for that, for sure. With having the women's life freedom movement, or we call it uprising or revolution, there are a few things that I want to highlight. This movement or uprising has unique elements in it. It talks about women clearly and loudly and asking for gender equality, asking for freedom, freedom for everyone, not only the women, but also all the ethnic backgrounds, all the minorities, religion background, different languages. Like we have such a big diversity in Iran, like any other nationality or any other nation. We have such a beautiful variety of ethnic background, religious background, and in this slogan, under this banner, we want equality for all of them. Freedom for journalists, for activists, for writers, for mothers, for everyone to be able to have a free life. And also it asks for woman's life freedom, the ordinary life, which is taken away by the Islamic regime in the past 44 years. So these three words became the most meaningful, the shortest, but the deepest political manifesto that it could relate not only with all Iranian from north to south, east to west, but also across the borders and internationally, everyone understand what it wants. The woman life freedom is beyond a movement. It is a political, social, cultural revolution, which is different from the traditional revolution, is a modern revolution, because it has a few unique elements that I'm going to name a few of them. People have identified one enemy, just with these three words, which is the regime, who is imposing and enforcing the gender apartheid system, taking the freedom and life from people. It is goal-oriented. People of Iran, women of Iran, they know that they don't want any more negotiations. The reform era is over. They don't want the Islamic regime anymore. So they know with saying women's life freedom, they're saying no to the Islamic regime, basically. It's intergenerational. So my mother's generation who, paid a high price after revolution. So many of them been murdered, executed, been in prison. They are on the street and with us. My generation that we've been raised under the darkest era of ideology at the school, at university, on the street. We are the mother of Mahsa and Mahsas in Iran, that generation who is taking the lead, the brave young women and men who are taking the lead with this revolution. So it's very much intergenerational and it could make connection with everyone. It's widespread, as I said. It's all over the country. And it's made such an organic connection with Iranian in the diaspora. In the past 44 years, that never happened. There have been phases of movements in Iran, but for us in the diaspora, we were supporting, but we could not make that level of organic connection. Now we also could identify our roles here outside of Iran. We know that they are the leader. Women of Iran, women in Iran, Iranian people are the leader. We are here to be their voices. And we know exactly what they want, and it's exactly what we want. We are able to get together and agree on the bare minimums, basically, and compromise, which is beautiful, and it never happened before. And more importantly, the reason that I'm here, and we are here, it was an aha moment for the international community and the human rights organizations. and the Western countries and governments. It became clear that Iranian people and at the lead, Iranian women are clear in their messages. The international community understood that shaking hands behind the scene or signing agreements under the table with Iranian people's enemy is not okay anymore. They understood that they have to stand behind Iranian people. However, well, I have to say that we appreciate what it has been done, specifically in the past 8 months. The fact-finding committee is formed by the United Nations. So many targeted sanctions by many Western countries, United States, Canada, European Union, been implemented. And also, the Islamic Republic was removed from the status of Women Committee from the United Nations, which, they didn't belong there at all from the beginning. But still, there is so much more needs to be done. The Revolutionary Guard still is not on the terrorist list by Canada, my country, basically, that we are advocating still heavily, and European Union. There are so many other things that needs to be done too, that we are hoping little by little, or not little by little, a bit faster, people of Iran see that support. As a matter of fact, now the international community knows that the Islamic regime is not only a threat for Iranian people and Iranian women, but also is a threat to the region, to the Middle East. And we see, the evidence of it in the Ukrainian war too. The Islamic regime is a threat to international community. They are capable of doing anything when they can shoot to the passenger's flight, the Ukrainian flight, and kill 176 innocent adults and kids with no accountability. They are the extremist ideologic regime sitting on oil and money, having weapons in their hands, and having all the tools to suppress and oppress, basically. Getting to any nuclear conversation and peaceful use of nuclear, honestly, and I'm sorry to say that frankly, is a joke. When the regime cannot, that they are blinding their own citizens on the street with shooting them directly to their eyes. They're killing them on the street and in the prison and beyond and above, basically. So that's the responsibility for the international community to stand right beside Iranian people and the brave Iranian women. We don't want anybody to walk in front of us or behind us. Our leader is Iranian women and the brave, courageous Iranian women and youth who are taking the lead. Our job here is to standing beside them and providing the support that they need. If the people of Iran and I'm going to finish with saying that if you don't see the people on the street these days, it doesn't mean that the revolution was not successful. I want to assure you that the Iranian movement of woman life freedom is defining itself in a different phase. And we as the ally, as the Iranian in the diaspora and the international community also need to have that flexibility and wisdom to redefine ourselves and our roles as the supporters, basically. So right now that we are standing here and we are together and I'm receiving this award, accepting the award for Iranian women, I want to acknowledge that so many women, so many men and women lost their lives during the past 44 years, specifically in the past 8 months. So many of them are still in prison or charged with heavy national security charges. Their life is not safe. but they are still taking risks. The schoolgirls are going to school every day while the chemical attack is going on widespread all around Iran by the regime. So I really want, if you're able, we all stand up and put our hands together to honor Iranian women and their courage and their fights for the past 44 years with the Islamic regime, which is the gender apartheid regime. Please.
Thank you.
Oh, they said that it's heavy.
Carry it? Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.